Hi, I'm Joe Quirk. Welcome to the Blue Frontiers podcast about all my favorite things: seasteading, the environment, special economic zones, and innovation in science, technology, governance, and society itself. Today we have Karina Czapiewzka, that's my best pronunciation, the floating city developer who was the first person to introduce me to the concept of cyclical metabolism, the first person to explain biomimicry to me, and the first person to explain how floating cities could be living beings integrated with nature. And how could we create a more humane world for animals? Karina's answers may surprise you.
Hello, seasteaders. I am here with Karina Czapiewzka from our team of architects at Blue 21. Hi, Karina. How are you?
Hi, Nathalie. I'm fine, thank you. It's still early in the morning, so we are in the process of waking up a bit.
Yeah, I don't think I've woken up so early since I was in school.
Oh, really? I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. So, for those who don't know Karina, Karina is the real estate expert of Blue 21. And we met in Tahiti in May 2017, and we immediately bonded because Karina is a vegan and I'm a vegan, although I turn vegetarian when I travel because, well, especially if I'm not alone. And we immediately bonded. I really like that you are vegan, Karina. Have you thought, at least I think it a lot, about a vegan seastead?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And also because it's more easy to produce vegetables, of course, instead of live animals. Yeah. Although they're thinking a lot about fish, and maybe if that happens in a humane way, if that's even possible.
In a humane way, yeah.
Then, well, it's better than taking out all the fish from the seas, right? So that's one of the, what a few years ago, even before we started this project, we were thinking about the Blue Revolution, and we thought, well, it would be great if we could locally produce in contained areas all the proteins from fish for everyone. And then we could leave the rest of the ocean as one big nature reserve. And so nobody would be able to fish there anymore. But I don't think the fishing companies would be happy with this solution.
I don't think so too. And I don't have much hopes in states either. Yesterday I was reading that after the United Nations Convention of the Sea of 1982, where the decision was made of giving coastal states their 200 nautical miles of territorial waters, it just made the situation worse because state used that space not to protect it, but to allow overfishing to take place there. So,
yes, well,
kind of doomed. But thankfully, we have things like seasteading, and every time the movement is growing bigger and bigger. And I have here with me a series of questions that we've been crowdsourcing on our Telegram channel. So
yes,
if you're not on Telegram, go download it and look for Blue Frontiers. So how about we start with the questions that we crowdsourced from our community?
Please, go ahead.
Okay. Also from Facebook. So everybody wants to know about costs and money.
Yes.
How much will the floating island project in French Polynesia cost?
That's a very good question, and it's not something we can answer just like that.
Okay.
Because we are not far enough in the process to have an exact number.
Okay.
So we have been calculating a lot, and we don't have a fixed price, but we are trying to, at least for the first project, to reach numbers that are competing with high quality cities all over the world. You can think of San Francisco or Amsterdam, and so the idea is that if you can afford a house there, it won't be very much far away from that. Ideally, this will change with the next projects. and the costs for the real estate will go down, although the value will go up. So
I love
actually,
it. Oh,
yes,
yes. I can see why.
yes, yes. And the further you are in the process of developing, the more you know about what it's actually going to cost, and the more we can surely say how much it really will be.
Yes.
But for now, we say that we are focusing on comparing it with these prices.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yes.
Another one of our questions is connected to this. Are you thinking of investigating techniques that can speed up the process of manufacturing of seasteads and floating structures such as 3D printing or prefabrication?
Yes, definitely. The idea is to find the perfect way to produce these, but also it's still in a process. So we're looking on one hand on do we want to build this in a shipyard? Do we want to use 3D printing? Do we want to build our own production plant? And should it be like a floating dry dock?
Wow.
Yes. So there's a lot of options. The goal is to do mass production, also because it's very cost effective, of course.
Okay.
I don't expect this to happen already for the pilot, because in the pilot we still need to find out the ideal way to be able to do this. So to set up a whole plant and then notice that we have to do a lot of things really differently would be the wrong approach. So probably this will be a hybrid form, where we partly look at more mass production. For example, for platforms, we will look into 3D printing. How can that be? How can that speed up? But also, for which parts of the project can it be used?
Yeah.
Maybe not for the underwater part yet, because we really want something that's watertight. So we're looking at combining all sorts of innovations together.
That's really interesting.
Yes, it is.
For example, your team built the floating pavilion, which you have there in a picture behind.
Oh yeah, yes, yeah.
Where was that built? Where
Yes. That was actually built in a harbor close to where it's now located.
Oh.
Yes, and this was built quite traditionally. So actually how one would expect a building to be built. So they started with the platform, the floating platform. A part of the top, the superstructure, was already pre-built and manufactured and put on the platform a bit later, but still assembled on the location. So yes.
That's cool.
Yes. And one of the benefits here was that it's located in an inner city location, where there are high standards for so for there are high restrictions actually for building sounds and particular matter was always in the air more if you are constructing. And the benefit of the other location was that it could be just towed to this location without causing any nuisance from the building and the construction process.
Interesting.
Yes.
So for the floating island project in French Polynesia, this would be different because, so I read on the environmental assessment framework.
Yes.
We can talk about it later after we finish
Yeah.
the crowdsourced questions, but how will it be different for the floating island project given the conditions of French Polynesian lagoons?
Well, coming back to the example we were talking about, actually, it will be partly the same in terms of the construction part, because it will be built in an area which is less vulnerable, which is already suitable for constructing probably ships or other parts, and because of that, it will be probably towed to the final to the end destination, and because of that, you won't have the building nuisance influencing the pristine environment there. So in that way, it's kind of the same. However, there is even more attention for the environment, because the floating pavilion has been located in an existing harbor, and here we're going into an ecosystem where there's so rich in fish and corals, and so there's another layer of attention of not polluting and destroying. And we're even looking at how to create parts attached to the project where fish or corals can also attach to. For example, little breeding places for small fish, and using materials. Yeah.
That's really sweet.
Yes.
So that influences the design in which way? Because also in the environmental assessment framework that you did, I read that mussels tend to orient themselves on platforms that are northeast, but
yes.
Algae is southeast. So how are you taking all that into account to produce a
yes. Well, what we will take into account not only orientation, but also to add a few elements that are preferable for different species. Although that doesn't have to be a very big, doesn't have to have a very big impact on the design, because if one creates a sheltered area like a platform, it actually already naturally attracts all kinds of sea creatures that use it as shelter. So for mussels, we can use ropes. They can easily attach to. There are a lot of systems I came across really, for example, a 3D printed structure made of starch, which will slowly dissolve, and these mussels can be first attached to that, and then eventually they form one structure together with all of them. And the starch will just be absorbed by them, and then it disappears, and you have the mussel colonies. So there's a lot of innovations being done on that. Yes, it's very, very nice. And not only adding new structures, but we also want to connect people using the platforms more to the aquatic life, and by making windows or areas where you can look at it and you really see what's around you.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
I wouldn't mind waking up on my underwater platform looking at my beautiful garden.
Yes. Yes, I wouldn't mind either. Only hoping that your neighbor won't be swimming there and saying, "Hi." Or maybe you could, but
maybe we can have some windows that allow you to see, but don't allow so much light from the inside to go out, because you are looking at ways to reducing the light pollution of the buildings.
Definitely, yes.
So,
yes. Yes, it's a good. Light is a very important topic in designing for the environment, because just like you're saying, on one hand, you don't want to have too much light at night, because it will really disturb their system, and this can make an imbalance in their production and things like that. But on the other hand, you don't want to during the daytime, you don't want to block the sunlight, of course, too much. And this also is what you were already talking about. Then we looked at the orientation of the platforms and calculated the solar path on the seafloor to see how much sunlight will be blocked, and ideally to not create any areas where there's no sunlight at all. So it's that is the first mindset about it. So ideally, don't have any areas where there's no sunlight.
Wow.
Yes.
It's like my
And
underwater penthouse.
yeah. I like that underwater penthouse. Yes.
What were you going to say?
No, that was actually I was actually already.
Okay, so another question from another of our friends. If
Yes.
you have unlimited amount of money, what other challenges would you need to also overcome?
Well, with unlimited amount of money, I don't think there will be any challenges because technically everything is possible as long as one invests enough. So actually, I think the challenges are more on a social or a governmental part. So that people will have the right mindset to take care of the environment, for example,
Yes.
and have that in their mind. Of course, during the design process, we will definitely attempt to do whatever is possible to make people aware of not polluting or not using chemicals, because you're very close to this very vulnerable place. Of course, to get the freedom we want, that's also, of course, a challenge. Making a new society from scratch, it's beautiful, but it's also going to be a tough one to crack for countries all over the world. So I from technological perspective, I don't know. I don't think if there's a limited amount of money, there would be no challenge. But that's not how it is. So
well, we are soon doing our ICO, so hopefully we can continue to the next phase. And
definitely. But of course, we're aiming at developing something that will be competing with on-land infrastructures. And eventually, the idea is to make it even better and safer than living on land. Just driving here, I heard on the radio that the polar ice caps melted way more than we expected. So because they found a lot of underwater areas which were so much smaller than a few years ago. Yeah, between 2010 and 2016. So a lot of additional water is coming. So eventually this will be the safer place to be, at least at the lower areas of the world. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh my cosmos. So how about tsunamis? That's something that our friends ask us a lot. How about tsunamis?
It really depends on where you are.
Okay.
So first of all, the area from French Polynesia is not really prone to tsunamis because of the bottom. So a tsunami, very short explanation about a tsunami, really gets dangerous when it starts to break, because normally it's only a short wave elevation. It's not a short wave, it's a very long wave, but it's a very short elevation of the water for a very short time, and then it's gone. So if you're at deep waters, you nearly don't feel anything. But it starts to getting more dangerous when it starts to build up. If you have the bottom and the bottom is going like this, then the big area of water will need to get up. So this is one moment that and then it becomes a bore. Yes. And then the water coming with this tsunami also starts getting this high velocity, and then it becomes a very high force and destructive. So usually it's not a wall of water, but it's like a very long fast wave which can last for 20, 30, 40 minutes. and that's
What?
this force. Yes, and that's the biggest challenge.
Oh,
So look, yeah, it's yeah,
wow.
yeah, and being afloat and a depth of 20, 30, 40 meters, usually you're safe because you only experience. So you only have to have a mooring system which is strong enough and flexible enough to let you lift a few meters.
Okay.
So, yeah.
What will be the mooring system of the floating island project?
Oh, that is a very good question. It really depends on where the islands will be,
Okay.
the exact location, because we have to look at how the bottom is and what is the best way to moor it. And there are many options. We can moor every island itself, but we can also make a more tight connection between the island and more parts of it. So that's still something that we need to research and decide on. Yes.
I saw you were looking at satellite images to see the depth
Yeah.
of the sea in order to decide where to locate the platforms.
Yes.
Why is this?
This was mainly done for ecological reasons, because if we project the solar analysis at a depth of 20 or more, the solar path with a certain size of a platform will be so spread out that you won't have the permanent shadows. So that was for us one of the most important reasons to use this depth. And the second reason is though in tsunami perspective, it's also better to have a bit higher depth than very. But still, I don't think French Polynesia areas are. I don't think their bathymetry is very. How do you say that? It doesn't really add to the force of the tsunamis because there are all these small dots in a very deep sea.
Yes.
There's no coastline for the tsunami to build up. So.
Yes, I understand because they are small islands.
Yes, and they're not, and they're like this, and the water depth goes down very, very, very fast.
That's what Igor told us.
There you go.
Yes.
So I'm glad that Igor and I are on the same page.
Yes, because he was talking about ocean thermal energy conversion.
Yes.
So can you explain us a bit about OTEC, please?
Oh yeah, sure. Well, OTEC is actually going on a certain depth with a very large pipe to be able to extract cooler water. Okay. And this can be, on one hand, used for only cooling, and then it's called a SWAC, so seawater air conditioning. Then you just pump up the water. But the difference in temperature, if that's more than a few degrees, one can already extract electricity from that. Wow! And then it can be used for a very large area of houses and generation of houses. Yes.
Are you looking to have OTEC in the floating island project?
I think OTEC is quite a large investment upfront. So probably for the first few houses, not. But if we're looking at larger structures, it would definitely be very interesting to invest in. Yes.
How about wind? I've never heard saying anything about wind in the time I've been in the project.
Well, wind energy could also be in the air. You need to be on a certain distance from your housing because it generates quite some air movement and sound. You don't want that next to your house, of course. So you have, of course, the little windmills that could be added as an additional system. But we are in an area that has so much solar richness and so much solar hours that solar panels would be more than sufficient to use for our electricity. Yeah.
Floating or on top of the buildings, or both?
Yeah, could be both. First of all, top of the buildings, because then you don't have to add any additional structures. But if one noticed that we miss an area, we could use, yes, additional.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yes.
Next question. How will you connect each module? So tell us about the platform design of the floating island project, because it says it's going to be 12 platforms, but it's also depending on future clients.
Definitely. So here it is the same kind of answer again. This is not that nice. So we think it's again not 100% sure. But looking at stability and durability of materials, concrete seems to be most favorable because it's heavy. So you have a stable underground, which will not move too much in the sea if you make it large enough. And on the other hand, there are projects already found close to seawater of made from concrete that lasts ages, even from the Roman times. So it one, you know that it's a very durable material. So most probably it's going to be a concrete platform caisson, and on top we will be more looking at local building materials that are you have a lot of beautiful wooden homes close to the ocean. And there's a wood type that can handle salty air very well. So that would be a very interesting building material for the superstructures. About the connection, well, yes, that's a good question. It again depends on what we want to reach with the whole structure. So there's an option to connect them with very flexible tow bridges. So you can just walk on this bridge most of the time, only not if you have some kind of tropical storm, then you should not use it because you can fall in the water. And then you will have all the platforms moving separately.
Okay.
Not that much, of course, but in terms if there's a tropical storm, they will move a bit because that's just probably the best way to design it. Because if you make it very unmovable, it will be very tight and very big structure, and one has to think of if you want to have that kind of rigidity all the time. But that's maybe even another topic. Or you can connect them as one, and then you have one big system, and then you have very rigid connections. So they're just connected like this instead of. Both have benefits and both have less interesting reasons to do.
Okay. Yeah.
But still figuring out. So the benefits are that if you connect them very tightly, you have one big structure which is more stable and probably will move even less during storms, and it's will be safer to cross it all the time.
Like your Pavillion, for example?
Well, Pavillion is one island. Yeah, there are two actually. That's true. Yeah, you're right. But we cannot compare them because they are still in quite very, very moderate water area. And the area will be in French Polynesia or other island nations. There will be more movement. Coastal nations, yes. Will be more movement. So we will need a different connection system for them. Yes.
So we are organizing monthly meetups,
yes.
And we had the first one in London last month.
Yes.
And one of the guys who went, Xavier, he showed me a video of a floating bridge, I think in Thailand,
Yes.
that is connected with little platforms of this size, more or less,
Mm-hmm.
and it extends for like 2 meters. And people were walking, and it was moving like this, but they didn't fall. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was so interesting because people didn't fall, but it was moving like this, and it was flexible because of the connections it had.
Yes,
Oh,
yes. I don't know if I would want that in my.
no, you want more stability.
Yes,
And
but again, it's for the wishes of the end users, and if I can imagine that maybe part of it is very stable, and other parts are more moving. So eventually we need to design something that everybody's happy with.
yes.
Yes.
So each customer will going to have flexibility in the design, because I know that we are going to have a whole range of possibilities, from people who
Yes.
are going to buy their permanent homes
Yes.
to temporary visitors, and also digital nomads, or people who come for a few months to work on the startups.
Yes.
So this will have different design implications, no?
Yes. Well, I think it's important to make a large variety of different types of apartments for different types of people. So we can look at small studios, which are more in a setting where you have meeting rooms where you can share, for example, um, your dinner table with other people from the building, almost more like a dorm type of design, but also larger apartments with one or two bedrooms, which will have all their facilities in-house, of course. And so we were thinking about a movement within the project of very collective togetherness with a bar underneath, and then going more into a private setting.
Hey,
Like,
that's why one edge, if it's shaped like a moon, one
yes,
edge seems to be very like, yeah, you would bump into people all the time,
yes,
and the other edge is more private.
exactly,
My
yes.
underwater penthouse.
For example, so you can arrive in a collective part, and the more you go into the project, the less you are, the less reason you have to go there, because all the restaurant and the supermarket, whatever, all happens in this part, and then yeah, that could be a reason for this type of design.
I like that a lot, because mentioning Igor again, he sees Blue Frontiers um, as the platform creator, like Apple is to phones, and then individuals or groups would come and download their own apps or decide what to do. So this whole spectrum of ways of living that you are including in the design, it makes me really happy, because it means we can end up with a very heterogeneous system
Yes.
and system. I love it. I love it. I love it. Let's go to the next question. So in French Polynesia, they use 60 hertz of electrical network, and in Europe 50. What will you use for the floating island project?
Interesting. I cannot answer that question because I actually don't know. That's also again something one needs to decide on further along in the project, depending on different things. But I know that here where I'm located in Delft, they are doing a research on not transferring the electricity they harvest from the sun into wow, how do I say that in English? So you have
Say it in Dutch.
gelijkspanning and so usually when electricity is harvested, it's being transformed into a way distribute it, and then when it's distributed at the
end point.
yeah, it's getting transformed again, and you have like 2 moments of transformation. What would not be needed if you can use it directly, but then you need a different system. So that could also be an option, but this is making things very vague. So let's not go into that now.
No, it's okay. So it's also a way of reducing energy waste.
Yes, definitely. Yes.
Distribute the energy across. Well, yeah.
Yes.
That's the next question, actually. Will each module be self-sufficient, or you plan to have shared infrastructure such as electrical network, pipes, water, etc.?
Both options are possible. It's easier to share, because I can imagine if you have a platform where you have offices and shop and things like that, you use a lot less water, but you can still harvest the water from the rain, and you can give that to an apartment building, which people have to shower and use way more. So I think they will be made in a way that they can take care of themselves. For example, per platform, a wastewater clean system, probably a drinking water cleaning system, fresh water. But you also want to share things. And I think that we can, if we look into what Igor is saying about connecting later groups of people, they can choose, do we want to connect to the infrastructure, which means we share, or do we want to be fully independent and only want to, share community buildings so yeah, I think both options will be offered.
I love it. I really like it. We have finished the questions that we crowdsourced from the community, and we will continue to do so. So if you are listening to this podcast, just keep writing us, and we'll do our best to have our experts answering to your questions. So now we can move to talking about your work, your job as a real estate expert of floating infrastructure.
Yes.
I should start by saying that you've mentioned in the past that there is a blind spot in real estate.
Yes.
Yet you are a floating architecture real estate.
Yes.
So why is there a blind spot in floating real estate?
I must say the blind spot is getting a little bit smaller. If we look at inland waters, there are a lot, at least here in Europe, there are a lot of new companies and specialists on floating homes are popping up everywhere. And that's a very nice thing to see. A few years ago, there were only a few companies, and now floating homes are being offered in Germany, in Austria, in Sweden, Netherlands. So if you look at inland waters, it seems like project developers are getting more into the idea of offering this typology.
Okay.
So it's getting less less blind. What we noticed, sorry.
No, it was a really bad joke that the real estate industry is putting glasses on.
Yes, they are. Better glasses. And that's for single homes and projects of single homes. So we see a transition going on, which is a very good development. And now we even see more and more designers looking at the sea for very large structures. So even there, the attention is a bit growing. Why I mentioned that blind spot back then is because what we noticed is that investments into large-scale floating projects were lacking behind because it was too unknown. And I think one of the main reasons why this was happening was also because we were in the financial crisis, and what happens then is that people tend to go back to what they know and don't want to do innovation, high risk, new things. But I must say the blind spot is, yeah, you're right. They put on their glasses, so it's not that blind anymore.
That's good.
Yes.
That's good because it does help.
Yes.
So where is it now then? How do you see it evolving in the next 15 years?
Yes. What?
With seasteads.
Yeah, there you go. Yes, well, that is one of the most important examples. We see a shift to coastal areas instead of not only inland waters. And there's quite some research being done now on these areas. The first few examples are already are being seen, for example, in Dubai. And of course, our projects for floating islands. Yeah, I think I expect that in the next decade, floating infrastructure, especially close to coastal cities, will be one of the options to expand the city. Instead of dredging and making landfills, we will have it floating.
Yes.
So, yes, yeah.
What are the benefits of building floating?
Well, there is a certain depth where the amount of sand that you need to make an island is getting more expensive than building a floating structure. There is, of course, you have quite an impact on the ecology. If you dump a big amount of sand on a coral reef, it will disappear. That's quite yes.
Seems logical.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're more flood proof, because if you make an island of 2 meters high, and we don't know what will happen with the sea level, but if that goes up very high, then you need more coastal protection, and if you're floating, you don't. So this is also a very interesting aspect to that. And yeah, I think those are the most realistic differences. So yeah.
I saw the world in Dubai, the islands, the world is, so not many people apparently bought countries in the world. And I saw a satellite image or a Google, I don't remember, but it was they look like melting.
Oh.
So, yeah, they are not so well defined now because they need to be taken care of. But because not many people bought, then they seem to be.
Yes, that's of course the water of the sea is constantly moving, and so if you want to have a certain coastal shape, you have to protect it, or you have to be in a place where the sand is being added. But if you look for a nice example is the Waddenzee in the Netherlands. Their island and sandbanks, and they move all the time. So the shape moves all the time because of. So you have the sea on the top of the Netherlands. You have a few islands, but then you have the islands that are submerged, and they emerge when the water is lower. But it's a changing system, so it's not at that same place all the time, but it changes a bit the shape. So that's a good example. And moreover, if you pile a piece of a large amount of sand, it always will be sinking down a bit, at least.
That's called self-organized criticality.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah, it's called self-organized criticality. It's one of the It's a key concept in complex systems because so imagine that you throw sand and sand and sand into a sand pile,
Yes.
and it just so you make like a little cone or a triangle, and at some point it reaches a critical point and that's what happens.
Yes.
So it's called self-organized criticality because the shape is maintained as you into the system.
Thank you. Now I also learned something. I will remember this one.
I'm glad I can be
Yes.
helpful. Yeah. So, how about safety?
Yeah.
Safety. So, what safety measures do you need to take? Do you need to consider while, for building floating structures?
Well, first, we like to call it comfort and safety.
Okay.
But starting with safety, there is a big difference with ships because people like to compare the two, but ships are made for moving and come in places which are a lot more dangerous than the area that we are located at. I would not imagine people walking with life vests all the time on our floating island. Whereas if you're on a specific seastead and a ship, you would need to have that. I think first of all, it has to be safe in terms of stability, and there also the comfort comes in because making it stable so it won't tilt, which it won't that easily because the shape is much more rectangular and much more even distributed than a ship. So a ship is always a long, thin thing, which is quite high, and it can move like this because it's designed to do that. So people often see the ship tilting and going to the side, like the Titanic. And for our design, that's just physically impossible because the weight and the shape and the structure above is so much lighter than the structure underneath that this happening to our islands is impossible. So that's one. So this safety aspect can be taken away. Next to that, we also have the safety, but we have the comfort. So if we have a project which will be tilted all the time, and everything in your house is moving from one side to the other, you have to grab that you don't want because that would will be uncomfortable. So we need to look at the distribution of the weight, but we also have a movement. So looking at the height and the length of the waves, and on how large our platform is, we can limit or almost have no movement at all in most of the time. But if we have a storm and the waves get really heavy, then probably some movement will be happening.
Okay.
Not expected to be very, very, very large again because we're there still in protected areas, but that this could be a moment where you feel a little bit going on, but still not, unless we make very small platforms that have that can go very easily with the waves, and then you would have this experience. But again, it's a comfort thing, and thinking from in terms of views, I think people of course need to be aware that they're surrounded by water. It would be useful to know how to swim, because so maybe a free swimming course would be something we could offer people if they and children need to be protected, of course.
Yes.
But it's a question that we often get here in the Netherlands as well, which surprises me because every kid here learns to swim at an age of 3 or 4. You get your swimming license, Yes,
Nice.
because we're surrounded by water everywhere, and if you're underwater, people suddenly ask, "Oh, but is it safe for children?" Whereas almost in every neighborhood here in the Netherlands, you are surrounded by water areas, little little rivers, or so it's in the perception of the people's mind. But if you have if we really want to attract families with small children, the design needs to be in a way that they cannot climb over something and just jump in very easily.
Yes. How about
Yeah.
cats and dogs?
Well, I'm not afraid for cats because they are very, although they hate water. I think the whole design and every platform should have more than one possibilities to climb in and out of the water very easily. Not only with tow bridges, but also areas where you can just almost feel the water at your feet, or so you can very easily jump from the water onto the platform and go inside.
Nice.
Yes, so I think even if they would fall into the water, they can find something, they can easily climb out.
Oh.
Yes, that would be poor kitties. Yeah. I don't think they would be coming near the water, actually. They will be probably stay. So that is also something we have been thinking about, how to connect the different platforms, not in a connection way, but more in a functional way. It would be nice to have two paths that you can walk from one platform to the other outside, but it would also be nice to be connected on the inside. So you have like the corridors inside the buildings, which would connect the other one. So even in bad weather or whatever, what I cannot imagine almost, but you can move from one to the other.
That is important. And for example, in French Polynesia, there's the rainy season and there's the dry season. And when it rains, it rains. So,
but it's still not a disaster to be outside, though.
No,
even then.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
You did the environmental assessment framework of the floating island project, and unlike other projects where they first build and then they say that they are sustainable, you are going one step ahead by trying to make the project restorative and take into account things like we already talked: light, pollution, temperature, turbidity, nutrients, toxic substances. Can you please go a bit deep into all these 9 aspects that you are considering as the basic standard for building?
I would love to do that, but I am afraid I need to be running soon to my next appointment.
Okay, so are you?
I'm so sorry.
Of this podcast?
Yes, I would be very happy to do a part 2 on the environmental part. The only thing I wanted to say in it is that if we take the environment into account from the first moment we think about a project, it doesn't have to be a nuisance. It can be something that, even if it makes it a lot better and more attractive to both people and the environment, and eventually for everyone that is around it. So that was the mindset of taking that fully to the front and keeping it, because usually environmental impact assessment is something that is very static, and you do at one moment, you prove, okay, hey, we thought about the ecology, and there it goes. And we would like to have it being really part of the whole life cycle of the project, from the first idea to the moment people will be moving out or selling it to other people, or even using it as a artificial reef or something like that.
Well, that's why we're going to have underwater drones monitoring, and we can talk about it on the part 2 of this podcast.
Yes, sure, yeah, of course.
Awesome. So, Karina, thank you very much for being here. You're the first guest of the floating architecture, engineering, and design
I'm so honored.
of the podcast because our friends wanted to know the specific details of the floating island project. And I'll let you go now. Say hi to Blue 21.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you very much, Nathalie.
Thank you.
You're so kind for inviting me, and I will gladly be back again.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Blue Frontiers podcast. To learn more about our work and find out how you can support the project, visit blue-frontiers.com or visit our social channels. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Blue Frontiers, or shoot us a note via our website. If you learned something and enjoyed the show, tell a friend or leave us a positive review on iTunes or wherever you're listening. Don't forget to subscribe to our show and remember to join us for the next episode. See you next time.